In this tutorial, I'm going to go over how to add the Gaussian blur effect to an image and layer them on top of each other. So here I have an image of me on a wildfire shoot. So here I've just dragged it onto my timeline. I'm going to resize this guy so that it is in the frame. It's just a higher resolution than my 1080 timeline. And now I'm going to show you how to add the effect. If you go into effects, just type in GAU into the search bar, drag and drop it on. Nothing is going to happen until you go into effect controls and increase the blurriness of the image. And there you go. Now, if you wanted to layer them on top of each other, what you could do is you could make this nice and big in the background. And then I could just duplicate the clip by Command C-ing, so copying the clip there and pasting. You can put it on top of each other. I can remove the effect from the top one, and then resize it. And there you go. So if you're dealing with lower resolution images, or if you are dealing with vertical format or just different formats of things, this works great to make sure you aren't stretching it out so that it reduces the resolution. Other things you can also do is change the blurriness over time. So if you go into Effect Controls, under blurriness, use the stopwatch to keyframe the effect. For example, if I wanted the image to start at the very beginning, I would activate my stopwatch, hit 0, make sure my play bar is at the beginning. It is not blurry at all. And now let's say, how long? By 10 frames in, so approximately a third of a second. Since I wanted it to be way more blurry, I could drag this. And there you go, it will get that blurry in that amount of time based on where I had my play bar and that stopwatch was activated. There you go, a nice blur effect. And if I wanted it to take longer, I could stretch these out. If I wanted it to be more blurry or less blurry, I could just skip forward to the keyframe and change that. Or I guess I could reverse them too. So if I wanted it to change, I've messed things up there by playing a little too much, I'd start that over again. So if I wanted it to get de-blurry, I could make a second keyframe and then go further in time and then bring it back down to 0. So there you go, it gets blurry and then clears up again. That is one way to adjust the blurriness over time. Another thing you may want to do is you may want to keyframe the foreground or the background, so add some subtle motion. Typically if you're adding in still image, you want to add motion to it to make it more dynamic. So let's take a quick look at keyframing it there. So if I wanted it to start here, I would just turn on my position and scale keyframe stopwatches here. And usually you want it to go for the duration of the clip. So now I'm going to double click, make sure I'm highlighted on the correct clip. Now that I've gone forward in time and my stopwatches are activated, I'm just going to reframe this somewhat. Let's take a look. I think this is going to move a little too fast, but we'll see. That works okay. You typically want it to go for the entire duration of the clip, so I'm just going to move these keyframes over. And there you go. Nice dynamic image. You could also move the background if you wanted to. So I'm probably just going to move this over for ease of adjustment here. But I could do the same thing, adjust the position and scale, and then by later on in the clip, I could have it going in the opposite direction. I've actually never done them moving in the opposite direction before on top of each other, so let's see how trippy that looks. That looks okay. It's a little trippy. I have mixed feelings about that, but you have the tools now to play. Like I said, if you have those smaller resolution images, you can have the Gaussian blur in the background. You can have this image on top. Having the same image just stretched out and blurred tends to look pretty nice, and just having motion on the top one, I'd probably, just for stimulation purposes, delete all these keyframes over here and just have motion on the top clip. That would be my vote. So that nice, subtle motion. And if your clip's a high enough resolution, like this one, you could also just not have the Gaussian blur. And you could just add a little motion to the image, nice and subtly. Oops. I'm working my computer really hard with a screen recording here and doing keyframes. Let's try that again. Participate, please. There we go. So if I wanted to start my image there, and then in a few seconds I wanted it to be over there. That was too much. Let's make this fit again. I could just add that nice keyframe effect. That was a little too quick. Let's make it go for the duration of the clip. Just adding some dynamic element to your still images there. And that's more than you asked for than just the Gaussian blur effect. If you're having trouble, always remember to turn it on. Use the keyframes. You can look at other tutorials on adding keyframes to effects that go over this in more detail. But that's how you use the Gaussian blur effect on images. Have fun.